Hey folks. So one thing I never did was make that video that I was going to make of my new apartment here in Russia, which I moved to after I moved out of the old one. I made a video of the old apartment, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now because I am leaving Russia tomorrow and I want to make sure that I get a video of the new apartment before I go. So this is the entry hall. That's my front door, and actually this door, I guess it has a lock on it, but this door is kind of mostly ornamental. That's the actual security door. That's what's supposed to keep people out. And this door has a bolt on it, like it has a sliding bolt on it. This is how a real man. That's how a real man locks his door. From 8 o'clock to 16 o'clock every day. This is the electric meter, so that you can see how much electricity I've been using, which my landlady graciously pays for because it's not very expensive. Energy is not too expensive in Russia. This is, where people can hang their coats and stuff. Here's a mirror. So let's see, when I start in here, this is the bedroom, which oddly enough has a bed in it, nothing very exciting. Out here there's it's kind of a balcony, except it's covered, like it has a roof and such on it. So it's more like, I guess, a little patio kind of thing. It has a table and stuff inside it. These windows, there are two of these windows, as you might be able to see. There's this one, and then behind it there's another one that opens. I don't know if that's an attempt to approximate double-paned glass, but it really doesn't work. I've never actually lived in a place like this where it gets really cold and where they use these single-paned windows. It is very cold. In the winter, when it gets down to like minus 25 degrees, you can literally just feel the cold streaming off the window like it's an air conditioner. It actually feels like it's blowing, like the cold air is blowing through the window. It just goes right through the window. And the fact that there's this radiator down here, this hot water radiator, the hot water flows through those pipes there. The fact that there's this radiator here doesn't really counteract it at all. This radiator is fighting a losing battle against the cold. That's the bed. There's a storage closet there. This is just the hallway where I have some suitcases that I've been packing. This is my refrigerator. That's another bedroom which actually is locked. I had the option of paying another, I guess like 20% more rent to have the use of another room, but I didn't really need it because I have more than enough room in this apartment as it is, so my landlady locked that and cut that out of the price of the rent. This is the bathroom. This is a bathtub, which actually, as you can see, has jacuzzi nozzles on it. I've actually never once used the jacuzzi function. Kind of regret it now. I feel like I should have used it, but I never did. There's another one of these towel racks, and this also plugs in. There's a cord here that I can plug in there. You might think it's not very safe to have an electrical outlet right there this close to a bathtub. You're probably right, but I haven't died from it yet, so what can I say? This is the sink. That's rust. You may recall that Russian tap water can get a bit rusty. And here's a mirror, which sometimes happens in the bathroom. Here's where the actual toilet is. In Russian apartments, it's more typical for the toilet to be detached, for it to be in its own little cubicle here, separated from the room with the bathtub and sink. And here's the kitchen. And it's a pretty typical kitchen. There's a little teapot there that I can heat on a gas stove if I drank tea, which I don't. Sink. This is a water purification unit, which doesn't work, but it's there anyway, I guess, just to look nice. Microwave. Usual stuff, cabinets. This window here in the kitchen, I want to highlight this window just for a moment. This window is great because it's the only window in the whole apartment that has a screen on it. So in the summer I can freely open it without worrying about mosquitoes flying in. Also, this is an actual double-paned glass window. So it provides real insulation against cold. I mean, obviously it's not completely cold proof, like cold will still pass through it to some extent, but it makes a huge difference. It's not too bad now because it's been warming up. This is mid-March and it's not too terribly cold outside anymore. It's a little bit below freezing still, but it's not like minus 25. But in the winter, like in the middle of the winter in mid-January, when it was really cold, you could really feel the difference. There's the same sort of radiator here, and I don't think this radiator is any different from the other one in the bedroom, but it is much warmer here in the winter because of the glass, because the cold doesn't just pass right through the glass. So I spent a lot of the winter sitting here in the kitchen. In fact, you can see that's my laptop there on the kitchen table. I never bothered moving it. I moved in here and spent most of my time at home just sitting in the kitchen because it was a little bit warmer, and it was just deathly cold in the bedroom. In the bedroom, basically, it's only bearable when you're under the covers. Otherwise, I just couldn't stand to be there. Here in the living room, it's the same thing. So there's another, excuse me, there's the same type of window back there. It's the same idea. It's two windows, but they're both single pane windows. So again, the cold pretty much just passes right through unobstructed. I get a nice little view outside. I'm on the 6th floor here, which is not too shabby. Some cars down there, obviously, and get a nice little view out this other window here. This is the living room. Here's a nice sofa. Here's a two-person love seat. The apartment came with, for some reason, it came with 2 telephones. I haven't used either of them. I don't use telephones. Came with a little dinky TV. Nothing too fancy, but you know, it's something to watch television on. I've also never used it because I don't watch television. For some reason, the apartment came with these huge Bose speakers. There's one there, and there's another one here, which I guess would be pretty cool if I listened to music, which I don't. But I mean, the speakers are pretty awesome. All this came with the apartment, like this furniture, the speakers, the television. All these furnishings came with the apartment. So that's kind of a nice thing in Russia. Typically in Russia, apartments are like that. They come with all the furniture and stuff, and you don't have to buy your own furniture. The bed, too. It's not my bed. It came with the apartment, so I'm going to leave that and all the furniture and stuff behind, obviously. But yeah, not too shabby. I mean, this is quite nice. My rent here has been it's actually, believe it or not, billed in US dollars. My rent is actually set at $1,000 US dollars a month, which as of right now is about 30,000 rubles, but it fluctuates a little bit based on, you know, how the ruble is trading against the US dollar. So there you go. That's my new apartment, and I'll be leaving it tomorrow. But I've been very happy to live here for the past, I guess, 7 or 8 months. It's been a very nice apartment, actually quite a lot nicer than what I really expected to live in when I came to Russia. I think I'm really living very much in luxury here, I think more so than most people here in St. Petersburg. And it's a little bit too much apartment for me, I think, but oh well, it was kind of temporary anyhow, so now I'm going to sit down, and I'm using this huge speaker that I just showed off as a camera stand because it lines up the camera nicely with my face so that I can do one of these vlog type of video things. And I apologize for my generally slovenly appearance. I never did find a barber here in Russia who spoke English. And when I tried going to a barber, I actually just had a photograph of myself with my hair how I wanted it to look. I just showed them the photograph and said, "Can you just make me look like this?" And they just looked at the photograph and they were stunned, and they just said, "No." So apparently, I'm not sure if they didn't understand what I was saying, or it was just impossible for them to cut hair, maybe. I don't know. It's kind of a mystery to me. I didn't understand what they were saying either. So anyhow, so why am I leaving Russia is the obvious question that many of you will have, which I will attempt to answer. First of all, I want to emphasize it's not any of the things that people would probably expect. Usually, I think a lot of people will probably, if I say I'm leaving Russia, they'll immediately think of something like the weather. It's true that the weather sucks. I have never seen a place with such horrible weather as St. Petersburg. It's way too hot in the summer, and in the winter it's obviously much, much too cold, and it's also windy, which makes it even worse. But it's not that. I mean, the real cold, the real terrible cold is maybe from mid-January to about mid-February. I mean, even early January, for the new year, we didn't really have much in the way of snow. In fact, I don't think we had any snow. I seem to recall we had no snow at all for the new year. So it was still, not that cold. And then in mid-January, it got really cold, and that lasted until about mid-February. So there was only about 1 month of that really desperate kind of, I'm going to die kind of cold. And that's basically when you can't go outside for more than a couple of minutes at a time, and even inside it's too cold, and you basically have to wear 2 coats inside at all times. And that lasted for a while, but it was just 1 month, and by the end of February things were starting to warm up, and it was pretty comfortable. I mean, it was still cold, but it wasn't deadly cold, it was just cold. So, the weather is tolerable for the most part. It's not the weather, it's not the food. People say that you can't get good food here in Russia, especially during winter. It's really not true. I mean, even now, you can buy fresh fruit and things like that. They're imported, obviously, and they're a little bit more expensive. You notice that prices for food and, groceries like toiletries and things like that, they're a little bit more expensive. They're maybe like 10% more expensive at this time of year. But you can still get them. They're not that horribly... Sorry, I'm just going to take off my glasses because I don't really need them right now. It's not that bad. I mean, the food's not that bad. You can still get pretty good food in Russia year-round. And food in Russia is kind of expensive. It's more expensive than you'd think, considering the average wages, if you will, of a Russian person. But Russia is a very community-oriented country, and that actually starts me off on the actual reasons why I'm leaving. So it's not because of the weather, it's not because of the food, it's not because the city's dirty or falling apart or anything like that. I really love St. Petersburg, it's such a beautiful city. There are a few reasons why I'm leaving. One, of course, is just paperwork. I'm here on a working visa, which is soon to expire, which is why I'm leaving now. And obviously I could renew it. But I end up with the same sort of situation that any working immigrant has who's in a place on a work visa. It's kind of interesting because I never really had this problem in the United States, even though I was also an immigrant to the United States from Canada. But I didn't really have the same problem because I was in different circumstances. But it's interesting to sort of be here in a situation where I'm tied to one company, where my ability to remain within this country is tied to my continued employment by the company that I work for. And it sort of puts you in that position, where you don't really have a lot of options because there's nothing else you can do. You can't leave your job, because if you do, then you have to leave the country, you have to pack up everything and go. And so I'm sort of tied where I am. I would have wanted to travel around Russia. I never even got to go to Moscow, which is a great shame because I thought that I would have an opportunity to go to Moscow. It just never really came up. I wanted to go with somebody who spoke Russian, just in case, because when you're traveling long distance like that in Russia, it certainly helps to have someone with you who you can trust and who speaks Russian. So that never came about, which is very unfortunate. But anyhow, so I mean, the visa process is one thing. It's just the fact that, I certainly don't have the freedom to move around. I can't go where I want or do what I want. And it's not even that there's anything especially that I'd like to do, but I just don't necessarily see a lot of future for myself in a place where I'm tied to one job, or at least one company that way. It creates a little bit of, it closes some doors, it closes off some options. Also, I think I mentioned when I was in Vienna and thinking of going to university, there certainly are great universities here in St. Petersburg. I visited a couple of them. But the Russian university process is a little bit weird. The Russian university degree structure is unique. Russia has still retained the unique degree structure that it used during the Soviet times, when this was the Soviet Union, and it doesn't transfer well. There's not really such a thing as as I understand it, there's not really such a thing as a master's degree per se in Russia. It's called a specialist or a specialization degree, and instead of the usual 2 years. So you go to a university for 4 years, you get your bachelor's or whatever's the Russian equivalent of that, and then I think another 1 year you get your what's kind of like a master's degree, whereas normally it's 2 years after bachelor's for a master's degree. And and people in Russia say that there's not even necessarily Russia doesn't really have a direct counterpart to a PhD or doctoral degree. And I don't know if I'm going to go that far. I don't know if I'm going to go PhD, but just the fact that Russian degrees are kind of weird and don't necessarily translate well into other universities in other countries is also a little bit strange. Like, for example, if I got a master's degree here, it's not necessarily assured that it would be regarded as a master's degree in another country. Whereas, of course, if you get a master's degree from an American university or almost any European university, it's regarded as being equivalent to a master's degree in most other Western countries. And I think it would be as well. I think if I got this so-called specialization degree in Russia, it probably would be regarded as tantamount to a Western master's degree. But I just, I'm a little iffy on the whole idea of going to university in Russia because it's kind of expensive. It's not super expensive, but given that I would have to remain working, because again, because of the visa situation, I'd have to remain working full-time and become a student, that would be a little bit tricky. That just... I don't think that would work out for me, honestly. I think that would be, I don't know if I could handle that now. I recently turned 30. I'm too old to be doing this, staying up all night to write a term paper and then go to work in the morning kind of thing. I'd need to, if I'm going to go to university, I think I would need to become a full-time student and not, maybe have a part-time job, but not a full-time job in conjunction with that. So it's really just a matter of options. It's mostly just a matter of options. It's mostly just a matter of me saying, look, I need to seriously think about my future. I mean, like I said, I've just turned 30 years old. I'm living like a guy who's almost half my age, maybe like a 20-something guy who's still young and full of adventure. I should have finished university and gone out into the real world long ago, and I never really did that. So I need to start making serious plans for living like a grown-up. I need to do some growing up, and I just don't feel like Russia is necessarily the best place for me to be doing that right now. And I mentioned the emphasis on family and community. When I first came to Russia, it was really nice. It was really fantastic, and I think I spoke about this a fair bit in previous videos. One of the things that characterizes not only Russia, but also most of Eastern Europe, is a very strong emphasis on family and helping out people in your community. And that is really great. It's something that you don't get to such a strong degree in North America or most of the European Union, which has become very... shall I say, a capitalist. I don't like using that word, but let's go ahead and use that word, or whatever you want to call it. I sometimes observe the irony that a so-called socialist country is not very social. People are not very socially minded. They're a little bit more selfish. They're a little bit more about what can they get for themselves. And so Russia is... in many ways, it's a very generous country. I shouldn't say, I don't know if generous is the right word, but it's caring. People care about each other and will make sacrifices for each other in a way that I don't think they would in most Western countries. However, that having been said, the problem becomes that that's a two-way street. And I never really learned to live that way. I mean, I don't have any family of my own. I'm not married, I have no children, I have no parents, I have no siblings, I have only some fairly extended family who live in North America. And so I'm pretty much by myself. And Russia is very much the sort of place where just society in general is oriented towards the family. And a person living by themselves... It's not like you can't live alone. Certainly lots of people do live alone. It's not a hard or horrible thing, but just the way that society looks upon people is a little bit different. And me not being that social, I mean, quite honestly, I'm not the kind of guy to go to parties and drink and that kind of thing. And, you know, in Russia, that's kind of important. I mean, the whole stereotype of Russians drinking vodka is a stereotype. And a lot of Russians have told me that they don't like this stereotype of just Russians always drinking vodka, because it's not true. It's kind of a cruel stereotype that's not accurate. But, you know, Russians do like to party, they do like to have a good time, they do like to go out and dance and do all these things, and that's true almost anywhere, but I don't do that kind of thing. I'm not that social, I don't drink alcohol at all, I don't like to party. And so I found myself sort of a little bit of an outsider in this society. When I first came here, I was very much welcomed, and it's not that I feel unwelcome now. I mean, it's not like I feel alienated from my Russian comrades, but I'm starting to realize that I'm a little bit reserved. I'm a little bit more. I don't know how I come off in my videos, in my YouTube videos. I probably don't come off that way just because I talk a lot when I'm looking at the camera. But in my real life, in my personal life, I'm pretty reserved. I'm not very friendly. I don't think I'm rude. I don't think I'm a terrible person, but I'm not the kind of guy who will chill out and relax and hang out. In fact, I even hate the phrase hang out. I don't hang out with people. That sounds kind of stupid if you ask me. And there you go. There's my asshole nature starting to show through. I'm really not that nice of a guy. I'm kind of a little bit of an arrogant prick. And maybe not horribly so, but at least enough that I probably don't really belong in a place like Russia where people are more caring and more warm towards each other. So it's just stuff like that. I don't feel like I'm living up to the Russian standard of being a good person or an unselfish sort of modest person. And so maybe I belong in a country where douchebags are a little bit more part of the standard sort of normal person. And that's part of me being an American. I mean, when you're an American, there's a greater emphasis on personal liberty, on being true to yourself and that kind of thing. And I guess I just got it from that, and I never really learned to integrate into a community or a society very well. So that's that. I'm planning on going to a place where people are a little bit more reserved, where people aren't quite as social, because I'm not that social. And I don't know where I'm going yet. Honestly, I don't know where I'm going. Right now, tomorrow I'm taking a train to Germany, because I know a couple of people there. And after that, I really don't know what I'm going to do. Honestly, the future is a mystery to me. You folks know as much about it as I do right now. So, that's that. What else should I say? I wanted to say a little bit about this whole idea of Russian women. One reason why I came here to Russia was because a lot of my American compatriots encouraged me to do so, because of this whole stereotype of Russian women being very much into foreign men. This idea that there are just countless gorgeous Russian women who are dying to meet some American guy and marry him. And I just want to say that stereotype's not true at all. First of all, I don't know how true it was 20 or 30 years ago. It probably was more true then. But even back then, I don't think that it was just the case that an American guy could just come into Russia and find women leaping into his arms, except for maybe the truly desperate ones. But the truly desperate women are the ones who, are really in very sad situations. They already have many children of their own and are extremely poor usually, and so on and so on. The United States, I will say, the United States is losing its edge. And we've all heard this. If you're an American, I'm sure you've heard it. Even if you're not an American, you've probably heard it. And things are sort of inverting. We're becoming a more, as they say, I forget who it was who wrote that book. There's that book, The World is Flat. I forget who wrote it, but it's a fairly famous book. Basically, the point is that, the world used to be very Western-oriented. It used to be that countries like the United States and the big European countries controlled almost all of the world's economy and culture. and it's not becoming that way anymore. It's sort of becoming more equalized, where the Western countries are no longer as significant. So we're entering that kind of a post-Western world. And you hear about the BRICS countries, BRICS, which are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, I believe. Is that South Africa? I'm pretty sure it is. So Russia is obviously in there, and Russia is starting to hold its own. I mean, Russia is not so bad. Russia is not doing too badly. People, I think, still think of Russia sometimes as a desperately poor country. There are still these stereotypes of, guys in Ushanka hats fighting off bears and drinking vodka. And obviously, that's a stereotype which was never completely true, and it's becoming less true now. Russia is very much becoming a modern, developed, competitive country which can compete against the likes of the United States or maybe even China. And then there's China, and China and countries like that are starting to become more prominent and more prosperous, if you will, at least in terms of money, than the United States, or at least they're on a trajectory to become so in the not too distant future. So, Russia is not that bad. There aren't that many people anymore who are really feeling this push to leave Russia. And Russian people still complain a lot. There are still a lot of Russian people who complain about how, the government's so corrupt. Just a day or two ago, Putin was re-elected president of Russia. And some people complained and said, Putin, he's the next Stalin, and he's going to make Russia, another sort of totalitarian state. I don't know how true that is. I think that might be a little bit overdramatic. Excuse me. But in any case, there are some people who look at what's happening in the government and they don't like it. And some people think they'd rather, of course, there are still some people who have this dream in their heads of living on a beach in California somewhere and looking at the waves, or maybe Florida or whatever. But, if you're an American, you know that those dreams are pretty much that. They're just dreams. They're not necessarily the reality. I mean, if you've lived in California, as I have, you know that it's not just one big party. It's not just going surfing every day and things like that. I mean, maybe there are people who live that way, but those people are really poor. I mean, you can't make a living doing that. You have to have some kind of job. And there are a lot of people in California who are really dirt poor and living from day to day and lacking adequate health care or nutrition because they don't have any money or jobs or income or, anything. So there are some people who want to leave Russia. I mean, if you're an American guy and want to marry a Russian woman, certainly you can come here and you'll probably find somebody to marry you, but it's not the case that, you're just going to come here and gaggles of women are going to want to have your babies. And I kind of suspected that was the case, but I needed to come here and see it for myself because there is that stereotype in the United States, and I wanted to be able to see it for myself rather than just guess at what was going on. I didn't come here looking for a Russian bride, and I didn't find one, which is just fine as far as I'm concerned. What else? I guess that's it. I mean, I don't really have too much else to say. I've really enjoyed my time in Russia. Whatever people might think, it wasn't that bad. There wasn't really that much that I had to adapt to. Life isn't that different from North America. There are a few things. It's there's a little bit that you have to get used to, but it's not that bad at all. I have never witnessed police brutality or been subject to it. The police officers that I've dealt with have always been very nice and respectful. I've never seen people being terribly oppressed or having their freedoms limited. Life here is just normal everyday life. People go around, they go to the store, they buy things, they go home, they watch TV or listen to music or play video games or whatever they do. It's just like anywhere else, pretty much. And I will say that I think A lot of people tell me that it's becoming less important where you are. And I think there's a certain truth to that because, again, there's this whole idea that the world is flat. It's not completely true. I mean, I'd certainly rather be almost anywhere than in, for example, Syria right now or Libya. I mean, okay, if you're in one of those places, that's a whole different story. But for most places, I mean, let's say you're in Russia versus England versus Germany or the United States or Canada or Japan or Australia. It doesn't matter that much. I mean, it really doesn't matter too much where you live. Life doesn't seem all that different in these places. People pretty much live the same way from day to day. Any differences are pretty minor, pretty trivial, not really that impacting on your life. And so I think that it doesn't matter so much where you go or where you are anymore. It's become, at least as time goes by, that'll probably become more true. Which is kind of ironic because I think now we live in the era of mass migration, and it seems like there are more people moving around than ever. That might be because we're living in a world that increasingly, as one of my former coworkers put it, we're entering a world without a Rome. And what he meant by that is, obviously in the time of the Roman Empire, Rome was the center of the whole empire. The Roman Empire was big. There was a lot of land there, a lot of different, different places, different settlements, different ways of living. But Rome was the center of it all, and Rome was the place to go. If you were, if you had some special skills, if there was something unique about you that would make you especially useful to society, or if you were a serious scholar or somebody like that, Rome was the place to go. And there have been places like that throughout history. Obviously, for most of the 20th century, it was the United States. I moved to Northern California in 2003 because of Silicon Valley, because Silicon Valley was the Rome. It was you might call it Mecca, or whatever you want to call it for technology geeks. And now Silicon Valley is not so much a mecca for tech startups anymore. Silicon Valley is mostly now a place for established companies. So, I mean, you have Hewlett-Packard, you have Google, you have those types of companies, but there's not a lot of new, exciting stuff happening in Silicon Valley anymore. You have places like, obviously there's Bangalore and Hyderabad. I apologize if I'm pronouncing it wrong, but yeah, in cities in India, obviously in China, there's a lot going on there. Almost all manufacturing happens in China. So, there are different places that are still significant to a certain extent, but we live more in a world where it's not clear where to go. The United States is no longer this bright and shining beacon calling all people to its shores. The United States is having problems of its own, and again, it's losing its status as the place where everybody wants to go. I've spoken with some people here in Europe who said, 20 years ago, people would have killed to get to the United States. Today, it's just not that way anymore because of the economic situation and the political situation and the social situation. The United States is just not the country that everybody wants to go to anymore. Of course, there are still people who want to go there, but it's lost its status as this sort of magnet for the world's greatest talent. So, increasingly, I think we're in a world where we need to make our own stories. Wherever we are, we might not all go to the United States. I feel very fortunate that I was able to live there for several years. Some people may never go there, and some people may never go to Russia. Some people may never leave their own country. I mean, there are many people who literally stay in the country they live in for their entire lives and never leave. I think Immanuel Kant, the famous philosopher, if I remember right, I think in his whole life he never traveled more than 40 miles from his place of birth. And he lived a fairly long life. I mean, he lived a full, relatively normal life, but he just didn't travel at all. So, there are some people who will live that way and just never travel around very much. And that's good and bad. I mean, travel is nice. Travel sometimes opens your eyes to how other people live, but it's not necessarily that important to move around. And I'll be honest, I hate traveling. I really don't like the stress and the expense of having to, you know, constantly pack my luggage and deal with visa regulations, you know, contacting consulates and getting visas and dealing with border and customs agents is just a huge pain in the neck. And then when I get there, it's just like, okay, I'm here. What am I going to do now? Honestly, I don't like traveling that much. It's just not something that appeals to me, which might surprise people because if you've been watching my videos, you've seen me go to St. Petersburg, to Finland, to Vienna and Budapest, and now I'm going somewhere else. And it's like, well, some people probably think I love traveling. No, I hate traveling. I'm just trying to find a place where I can settle down and call my home. And I don't know where that might be. I don't know if I'll keep traveling like this. I hope not. Actually, I hope I can settle down somewhere. But we all need to make our own stories. There's no longer a clearly defined place. There's no longer just one place where everybody wants to go. And so we'll all have our own unique stories to tell and our own plans for the future. A lot of Americans are leaving the United States and becoming expatriates in countries all over the world because they find that the United States doesn't offer them the opportunities they're looking for. And I think I might have been one of those people. Or maybe not. Maybe I'll go back to the United States. I mean, I guess I still have that option. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? I don't know. But ladies and gentlemen, I think my vlogging videos are probably going to stop here for the foreseeable future because I wanted to show off Russia. When I came to Russia, I wanted to show this place for what it was because there are so many stereotypes associated with Russia. There is so much misinformation and so much misunderstanding about Russia. I wanted to show a little bit of it for what it really is because I think it's not that popular a tourist destination. If I end up touring Europe, which I still might do, I really don't feel inclined to film too much of it because there's not much I could add. I mean, if I go to Paris, for example, what am I going to do? Take another picture of the Eiffel Tower? How many, you know, we've all seen the Eiffel Tower countless times. I'll probably go to Shakespeare and Company, that bookstore. Great, I'm going to film another bookstore. You saw too much of that in Vienna already. And, you know, if I go to London or, I don't know, Berlin, Barcelona, whatever, these are all cities which are very popular tourist destinations. You'll find much better travelogues and photo and video documentaries of these places than I could really provide with my limited travel capabilities and limited understanding of these places. So I don't want to turn this channel into just some goofy home video kind of thing because nobody likes that. Nobody likes to watch somebody's stupid travel videos of their kids playing in the water or something like that. It's just not very interesting to just watch some guy film random crap. I've tried to film things which I think might be illuminating or interesting for people who are not familiar with the places where I am. And I think to a certain extent I did that. And now if I'm going to go to places which are more popular, I mean, if I go to, you know, to those big European cities, or if I go back to the United States, I'll probably go to a city like San Francisco or Los Angeles or New York maybe or whatever. And there are already countless videos of those cities. There's nothing I can add. There's absolutely nothing I can add to the wealth of information and the wealth of imagery that's available for those cities online. So I think this channel has sort of lived out its purpose for now. I don't know what I'm going to do in the future. I'm not saying that I'm never going to make another video. I might, but I have no immediate plans to do anything with YouTube in the near future. And I don't really regret that because I think I filmed pretty much all that I could have filmed. I mean, I can't really think of what else I might have filmed other than Moscow. But honestly, I think even if I went to Moscow, it probably wouldn't look that much different. It would be St. Petersburg, except a little bigger. Moscow is the business capital of Russia, and St. Petersburg is more of the artistic and cultural capital of Russia. So Moscow is just like, I don't know, kind of like New York with Russian architecture, I guess. I say that obviously having not been there. Maybe I'm speaking ignorantly and maybe it's completely different from that idea, but whatever. Maybe I'll still go there at some point in the future. I don't know. Anyway, I guess that's it. I guess that's all I really have to say. I've probably already been talking for a very long time, so I should probably shut up now. As always, thank you folks for watching. I hope that you've at least taken some insight and enjoyment out of the random stuff that I filmed here around Russia. And you'll probably hear from me again. This probably isn't the last of me. Thank you very much for all of you folks for your loyal viewership as always, your comments, your questions, your support in general. I've met some really great people through the YouTube videos that I've made, and I'm really glad to have met and known some of the people who I've met. Life is it's kind of a chaotic stew. You know, you meet people and then you fall out of touch with people, and then you meet new people and you might stay in touch with them occasionally, or you might lose touch with them. You never know. Life kind of always comes and goes like that. And we're all making our stories. We're all sort of creating new chapters in the stories of our lives. So who knows what's going to happen. All right, everyone. Leaving Russia. This is Late Blight. Thanks as always for watching. I hope you folks are doing well. And take care of yourselves and each other. And I'm sorry for invoking Jerry Springer, but I hope I can be forgiven for that. And be well, everyone. Godspeed. Cheers.